Welcome to Recovery Live. Hi, Lisa.
Hey, Alicia.
Hey, so we are without Tom today, but we are going to take over. We are going to bring on Casera in a little bit, but before we get there, we just want to say that on our website, there's many retreats that are coming up that you can check out. Next one is Kips Bay, which is Manhattan, right? New York.
Yep.
The end of August, and there's many in the UK as well. Kent is the same weekend, the end of August. And Nevada City, if you're in California, is by me. And September, Schooley's Mountain is October. UK again in October. Leesburg, Florida, November. North Pennines, November. There's so many. Malibu, December, and then virtual, of course, in January. So if that was too fast, go on our website and you can get all the details. And today we decided, because we're taking over and doing whatever we want, we're going to talk a lot about mindset and habits and kind of see where our conversation goes with emotional resilience or routines. And we're going to bring on, is there anything else that you wanted to say about any of that before we get into that topic? No?
Nope.
Okay, so we're going to bring on Casera. So we'll have Casera, Lisa, and I. Hello. Talking about all the things with habits and mental resilience. And so where should we start, ladies?
So before we come on, because I'm a researcher, I was looking up mindset and like what that means and what types of mindsets are there. And basically from what I was reading, there's fixed mindset and growth mindset, right? So the fixed mindset is you are born with a set of things, you are this and can't change it. Where a growth mindset is one where you grow and you can learn new things, you can improve with practice. So beforehand, Cass and I were talking a little bit, how does that impact our daily lives? Like how do we impact our mindsets and our language and the things that we do? And I just thought it was a interesting conversation, and it reminded me a bit of what I do with my kids, because I don't know, I must have learned about this somewhere. And a lot of how you praise your kids influences how their mindset is built. So like if they get 100 on their math test, like, good job, you're so smart, that encourages this fixed mindset, like they did well because they're smart. Whereas if you say, good job, you worked so hard to get that grade, now the emphasis is on their effort, and that's why they got the outcome they did, because of how much effort they put in. It wasn't a fixed trait. So I'm very intentional about using those words with my kids instead of saying, wow, you're so athletic, or, oh, you're so smart. Like, you tried really hard, like, good job, So I didn't even realize I was doing it, but yeah, it's all because of this mindset focus and the ability and thought that you can grow.
It's so interesting, just the example with your kids. It made me think of this because, like, we always forget how powerful our mind is, especially over our bodies as well. And I remember playing soccer in high school. My coach, if we like went down, like fell, thought we hurt something, she would just start screaming, "You're fine, you're fine, get up, get up, get up, you're fine, you're fine." And we were like, what the heck? We're not children. But then you realize that once you hit, it's like a kid. When a kid falls down, they look at you to see if they should cry. And if you're gasping and like panicking, then they say, "Oh, I'm hurt, I should cry." But if you're just like ignore them, or like you're all right, go ahead, get up, you're okay, they'll just get up and be like, "Oh yeah, I'm fine." And it's still, and it works even now when we were playing. I remember times going down and hearing her say, "You're fine, get up," and all of a sudden, like, I was just up and moving again because she said it. She said I was fine, so I must be fine. All right. And it just goes to your mindset. Once you believe, like, okay, I'm fine, then your body's like, yep, we're good. Let's go. Let's keep going. And it's just the same thing like you're saying with your kids when you're showing them that it's that process. it's studying that makes that difference.
Right.
Oh, you were just born smart, so this is all you got. So you're either going to get the grade or you're not going to get the grade, and that's it.
Yeah, and what both you said is it just shows how our thoughts, whatever we tell ourselves or think, leads to our action all the time, no matter if it's athletics or with your kids or our spouse or addiction or urges, or it's all in our head. And in one conversation, you could flip flop and flip flop and flip flop. And we can like say, I'm going to do this, and then get scared and go, no, I'm not going to do this. And then, yes, I'm going to do this. And so we're in control of that, which is so for someone to say, like that, I think it's important to really know that where do we have, because we could have fixed mindsets in many parts of our lives,
Sure.
but then have growth in another, which just shows evidence that if we have growth in these, we can have growth in the other ones. Why don't we in those? Because we're holding on to negative beliefs and telling ourselves I fell, I have to stay down. Is that true? Is it really true?
Right.
It might not be true. Try it, and try something else and see what other people are doing. And then that takes intentionality, right? We have to think, well, where do I have a fixed mindset? And if we can't be honest enough, maybe ask someone else, where do I have, and they'll tell you. And then what do you do with it?
Right. And Cass, you were mentioning something about that before, and like accepting criticism and how mindset kind of plays a role in that, right?
Yeah, I feel like how Alicia's saying, sometimes you ask someone, sometimes you don't even have to ask, but your own reaction tells you like you might need a mindset change. Because I was reading something similar to Lisa, and it was by Carol Dweck, and she's a researcher. Yeah, okay. So she like is all about motivation, mind, and looks at mindset and kind of that's her main thing, is the fixed mindset and the growth mindset. And for fixed mindset, it's really looking at like the individual can't and or won't take negative feedback, and meaning criticism, well, because it to me that says it feels like it's an attack on their character. Like if I said, hey, you just need to work on this, they're looking at it and saying, oh, well, they're telling me I'm a bad person, they're telling me something's wrong with me, because they believe that this is how they are, this is how they are born, and they have like innate abilities. And what she specifically mentions, and this is conscious or in your subconscious, so a lot of people will think that this is not them. I'm fine, I'm self-aware, I understand. But then if someone gives even minor criticism or minor feedback, and they're reacting in this like very defensive manner, then that kind of gives you insight into, well, they feel that I'm attacking their character, but I'm just like letting them know that there's a growth opportunity here.
Right.
For change. And I think obviously that, like just like you said, Alicea, in all different aspects of our lives, we're going to have a different reaction, and we might have different mindsets. Like Lisa's had to correct me before on my tone. And to me, I know that's something I have an issue with. So that I was like, okay, you're right. I can't, what am I going to say about that? But maybe if there's something else in my life, like, say even people, if Ryan corrected me on my tone, he's going to get a different response than Lisa. And even though it could be the exact same thing and he still could be right, just who it is, I might have like a more defensive attitude, because my mindset with him is different than my mindset when I'm speaking with Lisa. So I think we're, like you said, it's constantly like ebbing and flowing, and what we have a fixed mindset in compared to growth. But like you said, you can change it once we're all capable of a growth mindset. It's whether or not we're aware enough to move that way.
Exactly.
Dale put it, fear of change is common. Especially in addiction, it's, you kind of know what you know, and sometimes that's less scary than what you don't know, even if it could be better. So it prohibits you from that growth mindset, because you don't know what's on the other side, or you're afraid of failing. I get that. I totally get that.
That's when we really need to get into the honesty and integrity and all the principles that we learn in the 12 steps of, okay, we don't know, but look at me right now. I'm miserable. Hello,
Right.
choose your card. Do you want to stay in this muck and addiction and whatever, fighting with your spouse, even if it's not addiction, staying in this mess of not whatever, health, fitness, or try something new? Yes, it's scary, but it's kind of like that insanity thing in step 2. Do I want to be miserable now or go into something I don't know? I'm going to stay here and be miserable for decades.
Right.
That's what the addict does. It's like, no, we need to be open to having a growth mindset.
Yeah. Well, I think sometimes the fear is the fear of failure, right? Like, so if you say, I am going to make a change, like I am going to stop drinking, or I am going to stop overeating, or I am going to start working out, the fear is that you won't be successful and then you'll fail, right? So people have like shame and fear of that failure, and that's that fixed mindset. So it's like, if I don't even try, I'm not going to fail. But if I try, then I could fail. Where the growth mindset is, I only fail when I stop trying, right? Like they feel like failure teaches them something and they continue to grow from that. So it's that switch in mindset of, and Alicia, you've known me long enough. Like I kind of have gone through my ebbs and flows with, I'm going to change my mindset. I'm going to start working out. I'm going to start eating healthier. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And you know what? Like I kind of fell off the wagon for the last month or so. And it could be easy for me just walking away. Well, I can't do it. Right. But no, I have this stupid machine behind me, the reformer, reminding me every day, like, no, don't give up. Like, and so I do it, and I'm accountable to people for it, and people know that this is my goal. So having that accountability has kind of been my motivator to not just give up and walk away from it and say I failed. It's summer, the kids are home, things are crazy. Like, it's just a different time. Like, it was easier to stick to when there was more of a schedule.
Exactly. But then in that too, we need to recognize that finding the time is something. Is it an excuse or is it a reason? That's a good thing that I tell myself. Well, I can't, I'm too busy and I'm tired. Well, that's the reason to do it, not the excuse to do it. You're tired, you're not doing it. You're tired because you're eating crap. So that's the reason, not the excuse. And again, it's mindset and telling ourselves, and I'm too busy. Okay, then why does that have to cut out? Cut something else out. Why is that the thing to go? I mean, we could go around and round and round and round. And sometimes I do with people and they get really annoyed, but it's true. I mean, come on now.
It's, like, and I could go through the same thing. Like, today, well, I didn't have time to do it today. Well, could I have gotten up an hour earlier and done it? Yeah. But I didn't.
Or it's like, how many hours of TV did so-and-so watch?
Right.
Or how long were you on Instagram? Or
right.
There's always time. There's time for what we want to get done. And two, I just remember what I was going to say before. It doesn't have to be, well, I don't have time to do this workout or I do nothing. What about all the middle? You could do 1 minute. You could do a walk. You could do something. I think we're so stuck in, if I don't do it perfectly, which doesn't exist, I don't do it at all. Well, what about everything in between? And then that teaches our mind again, okay, I can do something. What else can I do? We need to get out of that perfectionism stuff because it hurts us.
You end up doing nothing. Like,
I mean, I walked it. We joined the Phoenix for this rock climbing thing a couple of weeks ago. And like, I was walking into it, like, I can't do this. Like, I'm not even going to try. Like, what's the point? I'm going to embarrass myself. Like trying to climb this stupid wall. Like, I'm overweight. I can't do it. And I gave in to peer pressure and I was like, all right, fine, I'll try it. So I tried it and I got up like 3/4 of the way. I was like, all right. Like, and I actually kind of liked it to the point where there's a gym a half an hour away and I'm going to take my daughter to go because I think she would enjoy it. Like, it was something I was so like, "Rah, rah, rah." And then I went up twice and I had a lot of fun and I loved the people that I was with. And like, it was
Right.
just.
And then that was your thoughts that
Right.
you had to change to say, okay, I'll do it. But if you
Right.
didn't change that thought, you wouldn't have done it.
Right.
So
Right.
we are in control of those thoughts.
I was mortified, Alicea, though. I mean, I was like, oh my gosh, what if I fall off? What if people are like, what is this, heavy lady trying to do up there? And I'm just like, ah. But I shut it out. I just shut it out.
You, yeah.
And you always think people are paying attention to you, but no one's paying attention.
No one really cares.
Like that's that like psychological phenomena. We always think people are paying more attention to us than they actually are. But with what Alicea was saying with thoughts, like it's kind of like a paradox. It's like, yes, we control our thoughts, but like sometimes that's not a good thing because that's when we get caught up in like negative feedback loops and then we're stuck. And the book I'm reading, it always says like you can't like think yourself out of the mess you're in, meaning it's about anxiety, but he's also a doctor that works with substance use, eating disorders, things like that. And the like main, he does it in like 3 gears. But so the main one that I'm on right now is like looking at what's happening. So you look at a trigger. So you had a long day at work, and then you look at your behavior. Well, I think having a drink or having a whole cake or something is going to make me feel better. So that's what I do. And then the outcome, and you're looking at the outcome, and now I feel worse than I did when I got home.
Right.
And then the second part of it is he calls it disenchantment. So you start to be present. So it's not like just change your mindset. Don't eat the cake. Like if you end up eating the cake, instead of sitting there going, wow, I'm an awful person, I'm disgusting, whatever, you look at the outcome. Well, I ate the cake to feel better, but now I feel worse. So clearly the cake's not helping me. That's not what I need. So what would actually work, and then working with that, and then slowly you're changing your mindset so that the next time you don't eat the whole cake because you realize that that's not going to help you.
It's not going to help you.
Because if you don't, like he says, like the disenchantment process, if you don't go through that, then you're kind of just going to start swapping, kind of like what some people say, like addiction swapping. You just like pull this out and put this in because you didn't change your mindset. You just changed the behavior. But the behavior is just a symptom of the issue, and which is, the same thing within the steps is the spiritual malady is what we're looking at. It's not really the behavior of drinking. It's like, let's get deeper than that. And so this is just a more psychologically termed way of looking at it and going through that. But I think that's kind of like you realized you were in your own head. You realized, oh, this is all of the outcomes I think are going to happen, and this is what's triggering me. So then you're just like, all right, I'm going to do it. But you had fun in the end. So now your new outcome is, well, that was really fun, and everyone thought I was great. So let me go do it again.
Well, I don't know if that was the outcome, but
well, I have the pictures. You looked great.
The outcome is that you realized that you could do it, and you changed your mind, and you did it, and you actually had fun. So you have the confidence now of like the next time something comes up, scary, you can like, well, I did that, so maybe I could do that, and then you just add on to it. Right. Or not. Maybe you won't, and then the next time you would. I mean, it's not every single time we have to do it perfectly, and we're just on a trajectory like this. No, we're gonna fall. We're gonna get back up. We're gonna fall, and then we're gonna go this way. And it's not perfect all the time. It's just not.
Yeah. And I feel
like you're saying perfect, and like as you said that, it triggered, I don't know, a dream I had literally last night about getting stuck trying to write something for someone, but I couldn't write it perfectly. So it literally, the whole dream was me like rewriting it and ripping it off and then trying to rewrite it. And the person's like, what are you doing? Like, I think it was just my phone number. I'm like, I can't get it to like fit the way I want it to. And I just kept doing it over and over and over and over, and it never ended.
That's an anxious dream.
Oh yeah.
I don't like none of that.
Yeah, but it's that fear of perfection, I think, or that need for perfection. And it's just, it's not a healthy mindset to aim for perfection. It's unattainable, and it actually probably does a lot more damage because you can't ever attain it. And so then you're constantly in that failure cycle, you know. And that was another thing I read on here, like, how do you change your mindset? Well, you focus on the journey instead of the end goal, right? Like, so what did you learn along that journey, as opposed to, did you finish that end goal? So yeah, that's something I think, like, I didn't get to the top of the rock climbing thing, but I had fun getting to the part that I did, and I challenged myself more than I thought I could.
Exactly. And you didn't even get there. So that wasn't even the goal.
Right.
The goal was that you did it and you went face to fear and you had fun and you added to your resilience. And so that was the journey. That's
Yeah.
piece. It's not even the finishing of it that
Right.
counts at all. And we always think that's it. It seems like it's it, but it's not. If you really think about it.
Similar with substance use too. It's like, I forget who said this. It wasn't one of us. It was someone we had on or someone we had been talking to, but I don't know who. I forget. But they were talking about, I say reoccurrence of symptoms. I'm meaning relapse, so everyone knows what I'm talking about. But for reoccurrence of symptoms, I forget who was saying it, but they were like, if you've been using for 20, 30 years, then you stop for, you know, maybe you strung together a year, whatever you have, and you might have a reoccurrence of symptoms and start using again. They were like, that makes sense. You've been doing the same thing for 30 years, and then you only have this 1 year or maybe 2 months or 1 month of a certain life, and you have a reoccurrence, and people think, well, this is the end of the world. This is, you know, where I'm stuck. How's this happening to me? But they're looking at, as the end goal, it has to be abstinence. And if I'm not abstinent immediately, well, then I'm not doing anything. Well, I might as well keep using or doing whatever behavior it is. But to me, like, that's part of the process. Sometimes that's going to happen. People are going to have a reoccurrence of symptoms, or they are going to relapse. And to me, it's understandable if you've been living the same life for that long. And when we look at them and say, well, it's all or nothing, this is it right now, we're setting them up for failure realistically. And then it's like, okay, well, where do we go from here? Because now they're going to have, kind of like Lisa saying, they're going to have a mindset where it's like, well, I might as well just keep doing what I'm doing, because clearly I'm a failure. I'm not meant for this. But if you look at it as, okay, it's, you know, 1 step back, let's 2 steps forward, and we just get back into it, which is like 10, 11, 12, essentially.
Right. And then they can go deeper into, like, well, why did I fall? What was underneath it? Was I stressed? Did I blame my husband? Blah, blah, blah. And then you can work on that and then grow from that experience. Share in a meeting, because someone else relapsed too. They feel like killing themselves, but because you shared, you stop. I mean, it's just like
Right.
So many ways.
Yeah.
And the next time you feel stressed, you're like, oh, last time I did this, what else can I do? And then maybe you'll try something new. Maybe you won't. You'll fall again. But the 10th time, then you're like, okay, I'm not doing that anymore.
Right.
And then, but yeah, it takes, you got to fall and get back up. You only fail, like Lisa said, if you don't get back up.
Right.
If you get up, it's not failure.
Right. Yeah, I think that's hard for people to grasp. I mean, even me, like the first time when I went on Weight Watchers, right? And like, you're supposed to have so many points in a day and week allowance, whatever. And like, I binged. I fully binged. I was like, well, I'm terrible. I can't do this. But then I was like, you know what? Wait, like, this is 1 day out of 60. I used to eat like this every single day before I started. I'm like, I just made it 60 days, like with like balanced meals, like within range, you know. So I had to like snap myself out of it. Like, it was 1 day. Like,
right.
And then it's the next day, you know.
Too, I would suggest, and maybe you did, like, go underneath, like, why did you binge? Did you feel restricted? Were you mad at your husband? Were you tired? Did you not eat enough? I mean, there's reasons why. So what is that? Fix that. That's the root, not you binge for a reason.
Right.
Exactly. And then you go deeper, and then that's where the work is. But that's where it gets uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, mine is like stressy. Like as soon as I get frustrated and like I'm about to like blow, I reach for sweets. It's like my Xanax or whatever. It doesn't do the same effect, which I just,
Yeah, but then that's where the pause comes in, like
Right.
Sarah said, and say, well, that's actually making it worse. So do I really want to make it worse? Oh, I'm making it worse. That doesn't make sense. And it causes more anxiety. And I mean, if you finish the sentence rather than, where's the food? But we
Right.
have to stop and we have to sit in that urge.
Right.
And it doesn't last forever. You can
Right.
time it. I think they've had experiments on timing
Yeah, I
it.
think you're
And
right.
it
Yeah.
won't last more than a few minutes. So
Yeah.
leave the kitchen. I mean, this is easier said than done. I'm a food addict, so hello. But I had to like leave and I had to get the food out of my house. Why is this in my house anyways?
Right.
But
Right.
it works differently for everyone else, whatever the thing is. But we have to finish the sentence fully.
Yep.
Like, this isn't helping me. This is actually making it worse. And
Yeah.
what else is it doing? I never feel better the next morning when I do this. Ever, not once.
Right.
So do I want to do that again? Here I go. And many times I'll do it anyways, and then I'm like, oh my gosh, I did it again.
And then you have to. Then you have to think.
Britney Spears song.
Literally, just remix it. And then you have to think that I always say to myself, Rome wasn't built in a day and Rome wasn't destroyed in a day. Like I always just, that's just my little mantra because, you know, sometimes you're going to have a day for anything. And again, like you said, like you had 60 days, one day, like, let's relax. Look at it for what it was. You're like, got away from me, right back on track. Because once you dwell, then that's where the spiraling.
Right. Right. And it's funny because I can give like I've talked about it like Facebook groups and stuff, and people are like, oh, I felt, and I find myself encouraging them like, remember, it's one day. Like, why can't I give myself the same advice? Like I give great advice, I just can't take it myself. So I need to change that and listen to myself. Wow.
Dale said focus on the solution to the problem instead. So if we get all dramatic and say, oh, I suck and this is it, that's in the past. Okay,
right.
What are you going to do now? Your next meal is going to be amazing. You're not going to like inhabit atomic habits. Never miss twice. I'm not doing that again today. The next thing is going to be good. What can I do? It's just not just drama on something that it already happened. Okay, move on.
Right.
It's just going to make it worse. And then you're going to feel like crap. And then you're going to want to do it again because you're beating yourself up, which is, I mean, I feel like a hypocrite because I lived that for 33 years, but it's hard to do, but you have to like, just kind of make yourself do it sometime.
Right. Yeah, you have to. I mean, I think with anything, you got to push through it. And like you said, the second time, like don't fall a second time in a row. Like just keep going and learn from it. That's the whole thing, right? The journey, learn from it, like reflect and then move on and try not to make the same mistake twice.
We always said in soccer for when I played in college, we would say like embrace the suck. Because 6 a.m. practices, being about it, and just going into the conditioning, not about it. But if you complain, somehow the running gets harder. So it's like this shouldn't be as hard, but now it's harder because we're all like just stewing and complaining, and so we always used to say embrace the suck. And one of my high school coaches I'm so friends with, I'm a mental case. If anyone didn't notice that by now. So my biggest problem in sports was that I'm physically very capable, but my mind would be like, you're not good enough. So then I'd have bad games or whatever. And it's all in my head. And I would know that, but I wouldn't get out. So one of the things my coach would say to me is like, if you planted a bunch of weeds, would you expect an apple tree to grow? And I was like, stop. I was like, no. Because I was just constantly negative self-talk, negative self-talk, negative self-talk. So her point is, well, why did you think you were going to play well or do well if in your head this whole time you're telling yourself that you can't do it, that you're not good enough, that you're going to mess up this next touch, or you're not going to score the basket or score a goal. Why would you think that you'd be able to if that's constantly what you're telling yourself? And even though that should be obvious, once she said it, I was like, oh man, like, you're right. I'm doing it to myself. And I know for me, like, sports is really, well, besides my parents, obviously, shout out, but besides my parents, sports was really, like, I think how I came into a growth mindset for most of the things in my life, because in one, I had really great coaches, but when you're in a sport, you're either getting better or you're not doing anything. And I wanted to be the one on the field. And so I was going to do whatever it takes to get to that point. And I've been told that I wasn't good, that I wasn't going to play, that I should sit in the bench. I've been screamed at, but from that, it didn't come off as, well, I'm just not good, I need to sit down, and they're right, I shouldn't be on the field. It came as, well, I'm going to make a point to show you that no one's ever going to tell me I'm not good enough, and I'll never be the one on the bench. Like, I'm going to be in the game. And through that just kind of like began to translate into other aspects of life, because I was always in like captain positions, and that's like bittersweet. And I think the outcomes are bittersweet because, I wasn't allowed to have a bad day. I couldn't come to practice upset or mad or not want to be there. Like, I always had to come with my A game, because whatever I did, everyone was going to follow me. And even if someone else messed up, I was the one that was going to get yelled at, inside or out, at the sport or just at school. If they're doing something wrong, my coach is coming to me saying, well, why aren't you keeping an eye on them? Because that's what your job, you're the leader. So I think that a lot of that goodness came with that, but also on the flip side of that, perfectionist. Like, I feel like even now, I don't play a sport. Like, I'm out here just trying to live, but I still came out feeling like, oh, I can't have a bad day. And I constantly need to be doing something, and I constantly need to be on whatever I'm doing, and I have to be taking care of everyone around me. I have to make sure they're on, even though, like, I hold zero position of power anywhere, and that's not my job. But I still, like, that's rooted in me. And sometimes I have to wake up and realize, like, I don't have to be productive every day. Right. I don't have to, like, be at 100, and I don't have to be, like, miserable and, like, so stressed. Like, for some reason, stress equates to, like, you're doing it right. So sometimes that's how I feel. Like, I feel like I should be stressed, and I feel like I should be stressing myself out, and then I'll be doing what I'm supposed to be doing and well. So it's, like, intertwined and different with both growing through that, but also bringing some of that with me into everything I do now.
And, it's interesting. I wonder, Cas, like, how much culture plays in our mindset too. You know what I mean? Like, because I think our culture encourages stress and the mindset of, if you're not doing something, you're not worth anything.
Busyness.
So, right. Like, busyness equals, like,
accomplishments.
Right. So how, like, when you have a culture telling you that this equals this, how do you separate yourself from that culture and remove that mindset? I mean, there was something I just posted on my Instagram page, which is my accountability page for my workouts. Yes. It was someone, like, drowning, and it's like, between being told that I'm supposed to exercise, drink enough water, have a full-time job, raise my kids, decorate my house, have a clean house, make dinner for I'm drowning. Like, but that's the culture. Like, women especially are expected to be able to do all of those things. And if you don't, I mean, and maybe you're not, but are you, like, you feel like you're viewed as a failure if you're not checking all those boxes off. But it's a lot, like, I don't know. I get that feeling of drowning often with 2 young kids and a job and a house and work. Yeah. It's just,
Yeah, it's definitely our individualistic culture.
Yeah, I think for you, for that example, or anyone else with that example, is that that's where you need to find that middle ground of like, it's not perfect house, perfect dinner, perfect children, perfect body, or nothing. It's
Right.
what can I do? And Tuesday is going to look different than Saturday. And hubby, you're not going to get any loving today because I'm with the kids. And there's no perfect balance ever.
Never.
You're either working on your job and then you're going to concentrate on, and you got to just kind of figure out and start maybe weeding out stuff that doesn't need to be there, which is hard. But we need to like, no, I'm not doing that, and I'm not volunteering for that, and I'm not doing that. I'm sorry, it's not. But that's hard to do too.
Because
we want to people please, or we want to be accomplished, or we like to go and do that thing. But sometimes it's like, it's not my season right now.
Right. You know, I joke that I took on being the Girl Scout leader mom, and I was like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
You know, but like I felt like I had to do it to make my daughter and everybody else happy, and here I am planning trips and hating my life because of it.
Nope.
Yeah, but then again, that ties into
I feel like
everything. Like pausing, stopping, looking at our life, looking at our calendar.
Right.
Doing it, not just like, I'm so busy, I need to look at my calendar, and then 2 days go by.
Right.
Do it. What can you get rid of? What can
Right.
you, maybe you need to ask for help. Maybe you need to get a service for people to come and watch your kids one day a week, or get somebody to food prep with you. Or, I mean, everybody's different, you know?
Yeah.
You don't have to exercise 10 hours a week. You could do 15 minutes 4 times a week, or, you know, and then get in that groove and then shift that. And but you gotta look for something and change it. And maybe that doesn't work. Okay, try something else.
Right.
You know?
Right. That's just it, is trying something else. You know, if it doesn't, but trying it, you have to, right? Like but again, that's that fixed versus growth. I think you have to have the growth mindset in order to make that leap, to try and be open to failing and having it not work, and then learning from that and moving to the next trial, right? Like if you have a fixed mindset, you're like, well, that's it. It's
yeah. And we say, I can't do it, I can't do it. And then, well, of course you can't, because you just said you can't. Like Sarah said, like, if you have a negative mindset and say you can't, then you can't.
Right.
I believe you. You're fighting for your limitations, you get to keep them. So we need to change that, or be open to people calling us out on our crap.
Right.
Like her coach calls her out. We need to be called out sometimes.
Yeah. I mean,
I got called out.
And I think Cass is right. Like, you can take that like open criticism from certain people better than others. You know, like Alicea, if you told me like knock the crap off, like look at X, Y, and Z, I could take that better from you than my husband telling me that. I'd be like, you don't know what you're talking about, you know. But like you, from like an outside perspective, like I'd be like, oh, that's an interesting point. Like, yeah, I see what you mean, you know. So it's interesting, and I wonder how that plays in. And like, should I be more open to? Probably I should be less defensive. Like,
family's always the hardest too, though, because it just, no matter what, it's personal. It's like, don't tell me it's not personal, because it is personal, because you're my husband, or you're my mom, or you're my dad, or my sister, or my brother, like immediately personal.
Well, I'm going to switch gears for a second, because like one thing that Cass and I kind of talked about was language, right? Like, and how that affects mindset. And I don't know the answers to this, Lisa. I'm just curious what your thoughts are on how the language that's used in recovery programs affects people's mindset. Like having to always say, like, I'm an alcoholic for the rest of my life, I'm just in recovery, versus saying like, I'm recovered, I'm not an alcoholic anymore. Like I struggled in the past, but I'm recovered. How do you think those two different languages affect people's recovery, or do you not think it really matters?
I do, but then I think too, it depends on the context and the person, because there's people, I'm sure, I can't pick them out, but I'm sure there's people that say, I am blah, blah, and I'm a recovered addict. And they're perfectly fine with saying that. And it's not a negative thing. For me personally, I feel stronger and better saying I'm recovered from, because it just hits me a little bit differently. But I think some people might be okay with saying I am an alcoholic, and it just gives them comfort, maybe of in a line that knows that they can never drink, and then they can function from there. But I feel it's more of like I'm not engaging in my alcoholism right now, or my drugging, or whatever it is. I am recovered, but I need to stay in 10, 11, and 12. It's not like I'm recovered, I'm done. And if those thoughts come in of like, well, maybe I can drink, that's a step 10. I mean, you have to have the context and all of that other stuff to make it okay. But I'm sure there's some people that say I'm an alcoholic and they're happy and fine and don't feel labeled. I just did. I felt like it was, I was speaking a negative thing into myself, maybe, or.
And does that go into that fixed mindset of like, you know, I am there, you know, I was, therefore I am always going to be. And maybe it's true. Like, you know, so I just.
People could probably argue and say, well, not me, but people that know all the scientific stuff and all the stuff, and could say, well, you are. Yeah. You're biologically an alcoholic, and because of your brain, and that's just the way it is.
Yeah. Yeah. I just always wondered that, because I've seen such reaction to people like hearing that word recovered for the first time, and like this like light bulb goes off, and we're like, oh, I'm not an addict still. Like, I'm not going to use again, but like, I'm not.
It's not a lot of people though get offended.
I know.
Like, they don't like it at all, and then I wonder, like, why is it so bothersome to you?
Right.
What
maybe
is
like
that?
a fear response? Like they're so used to identifying as one way that they can't imagine. Yeah, you can. It's just maybe that's
on us. Like, you can be an alcoholic. I'm recovered. Why do you get so mad that I'm saying I'm recovered? That might be something you need to work on with your sponsor.
Yeah. I think that's the biggest thing with language is like, I forget the quote, but basically it's saying like communication isn't about what I'm saying to you. It's about how you're going to perceive what I'm saying to you. So like, it was like a podcast and it was about relationships, but the guy was saying that you have to communicate in a way that the other person's going to hear you, not just the way that you want to say it. So it's like, you know, if I know Lisa takes criticism well, I'm going to just say whatever I want to say. I'm going to say it right to her. But, you know, if Alicia didn't take criticism well, I'm going to sugarcoat it. I'm going to have a little conversation. I'm going to go about it differently.
Right.
And I think that's the same thing. If someone wants to say like, you know, I'm in long-term sustained recovery, that's how I'm going to say it to you. Then that's like, if I'm just talking about it as like from like an outside perspective. And then for me personally, I try my best to use language that's very neutral and very leaning towards scientific, meaning like substance use disorder or struggling with substances or like chaotic usage of alcohol, which when I say that, you know what I'm talking about. You know, that means, well, chaotic, not great. Something's going on in their life, or reoccurrence of symptoms, which they're using again, whatever. So that it's very neutral. Like I'm not putting any connotation to it. It's nothing, so that that person can come and say however they want to identify or however they feel that's on their journey. Yeah. So I think that, it's about everyone's, like you're saying, everyone's empowerment is different. The way someone wants, you know, what language they want to use surrounding themselves. But I think that like from an outside perspective, using like neutral language is just better when you're speaking about it, because then it's like I have no business either way. It's like we were in the peer recovery specialist training I took, like we were taught like if someone's talking to you and they're telling you, I want my kid back, but I just killed a dime of heroin, and then I just did this and this and this. You say, okay, as in like deadpan, like, okay, you're not saying like, okay, great, keep it up. Or like, okay, like clearly you're doing the opposite of what you want. You just very, it's like giving them a mirror. You say, okay, and then you say, okay, you want your child back, and I'm just gonna, this is what you just told me, and you like repeat it back to them, because then it's like holding up a mirror for them to go, oh, I'm doing the opposite of what I like, the opposite of what I need to be doing to reach my goal. And it's just using that neutral language, because when you're neutral, like they don't have anything to like go up against, because sometimes people probably are looking either for a way to reaffirm what they're feeling, or they want to push back on you a bit. So I just think for me, neutral language, and then they'll tell me what they want to hear, or what language they might want to use, or how they want to communicate.
You know, what comes to mind too is with Tom and I don't like the term relapse prevention. That seems really negative. So when we're teaching 10, 11, and 12, we say recovery assurance. It's the same thing, but it hits a little bit. So I have relapse prevention crossed out in my legacy guide. I like it because I am in recovery assurance. I'm assuring my recovery. If I stay in 10, 11, and 12, that gives me the responsibility. That gives me some of the power with God, of course, to assure myself of being recovered instead of relapse prevention. It sounds so negative. But again, some people love that term. Great. You use it. I'm not using it. It's fine.
Well, I guess that's just it. That's kind of what Cass is saying. Like everyone has their own language, and rather than trying to shove your language down someone else's throat, accept what their language is. It doesn't mean you can't have a conversation about the different words and how they affect you. But I think the idea of just listening, which I think is a very lost skill in our culture, as to the rationale, is probably more impactful than using one word than another, So I think about the lack of listening and respect for others' opinions to just be like a cultural issue, societal issue. We've lost the art of conversation and, tactful debate, and it's turned into just hate talk as opposed to learning and listening.
Yeah. And I think it's kind of like similar to the fixed mindsets. Like if you're giving me your opinion and I'm shutting down and I'm like immediately, no, it's wrong. I'm like looking at your character as if your opinion is your character. Like you're evil because we share different views. But it has nothing. We could have 10 things in common and then disagree on one thing. And people let that one thing become that whole person. That's what they represent, which makes no sense. Because then
tough. I have a friend, former coworker and friend, she tends to post very negative things on Facebook, like those of you who did this are idiots and this and that. Like it's not helpful. Like rather than say why people are idiots, explain why you feel that your position like is the right one, or why you feel so passionately about it. Like give the positive instead of pulling down the negative, like I believe in this because X, Y, and Z, as opposed to you're just an idiot for doing this. It's just a different, again, it's that mindset, and I'm always of the mindset of I want to hear everybody's opinions, especially if they're different than mine, because it makes me more educated and helps me be more empathic towards others, whereas if I just shut you out, like what good am I doing? So
and you could learn something or not, but at least the conversation does something. Like one of my hairdressers, she had a really negative experience with someone that was in chaotic use close. So she was like, how can you work in that field? Like, what are you doing? So I just explained what I did, went through what I do, what I believe, whatever. And she was stark disagreement, and I could have been like, well, you're just a bad person. But she told me her entire experience. And I'm like, yeah, I understand where you're coming. Like, that makes sense. I'm not going to change your mind. I'm not going to try to change your mind because that makes sense. And that's a perspective that everyone has to keep in mind when you've been hurt in that instance, like, and we've talked about this before, it's not just snap, forgiven, all is done. It's, you know, it is that work that in general, the family healing together. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. that's it. Like, we don't have to argue about it. And she understood where I was coming from, because it's a different perspective. It's not family. It's not, you know, it's not someone I came up with or something like that. It's a little different.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. I think the more that we can talk and the more that we can listen without getting closed off or being triggered by words or whatever, the more we can grow and learn and be better people. I mean, Sue put something, kindness counts. Like, it's one of the greatest things that you can give someone is just kindness and respect, you know? Like, my husband, there's a gentleman in our town that walks down the street like singing and dancing, like everybody loves him. He's fun. And but he, you know, he's kind of a social outcast in a lot of ways. But like, my husband saw him in the parking lot of his work. He's like, hey, what's up? I see you around here all the time. My name's Jim. And the guy's like, oh, you're talking to me.
Aww.
Like, wow, no one, you're a good guy. You're stopping and talking to me. Like, he was taken aback by that, you know? And my husband's like, well, yeah, like, I just never, like, am in the same spot as you. I see you, but like, yeah, how are you? So it's just that those little things. And like, the guy ended up going into his life story about how cocaine ruined his life. And, you know, he just, that little hello, how are you, kind of changed his day for that day.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, the energy you put out is what you attract. Because like, when I started working in substance use, all of a sudden, like, half the people I knew were in recovery, but they like had never told me. Yeah. And all of a sudden they're like, oh yeah, I'm in recovery. And I'm like, who the hell are you? And like my neighbor all of a sudden just randomly, like, I would like wave, but he like we like had an actual conversation one time, and he was in recovery, and he had actually gone to the recovery center I worked at before I was there. And like, I don't know, I thought it was so weird, like the universe was like, here we are. Because I feel like when you're open to something, or like your energy is open, then that's what you're going to start to attract, and you're going to see more than if you're very closed off and are like, these are my views and I'm done with everything else. You're never going to see it's like blinders.
Yeah.
And then you never see everything else that's around you.
Right.
And that's like with pretty much everything.
And without having conversations and connecting with these people, we would never know, right? That's another thing that I'm constantly learning, because I'm a wallflower and an introvert. And I want to go to these stupid parties that Tom makes me go to and talk to people and be social at retreats. It's like really hard for me, but I need to get uncomfortable. I need to do it. And in that, I meet people with the same story, and then people come up to me and I'm like, oh, okay, this is why I need to do this. I still hate it. That's without talking, you don't have a relationship.
That's it. And that's the biggest thing is community, you know, like when I think that's the thing that helps all of us, is knowing that we belong somewhere, right? Like, and it's all those connections and similarities, and you know, you could have totally different political views with someone, but share the same experience with, you know, drugs and alcohol, and be able to connect on that level and impact each other's lives, you know. So it's those shared experiences, the connections, that really it's all about at the end of the day, right? And we just got to try not to close ourselves off because of one difference, you know. But
yeah,
those are the ones you learn the most from.
Conversations. Is there any closing thoughts? I think that was pretty full spectrum of all the mindset stuff.
Dale says you're a social butterfly, so stop hiding.
That's what do they call it? What's the word when it's not true, but they say it anyways? Anyways, it's because he saw me when I wasn't, and he's kind of like poking at that, because I'm not. I'm trying.
Oh, Dale. He was saying before, he can't wait to see me on American Ninja Warrior. He likes to poke. He knows the buttons.
Until you poke back. Watch out.
It's true. It's true. I poke back everyone's.
Yeah.
He wants to be on that show, deep down, maybe.
Yeah.
Right?
Cool. All right. Well, what do you say? I think we close out, and we'll be back next week. Same time, 1 Eastern, 10 Pacific, and
Nighttime UK.
6 p.m. UK.
nighttime.
When it's dark out, UK.
Yes. All right, bye, everybody. Check out the retreats. There's a lot coming up, and I'll see you girls later.
Bye.